Bom dia a todos. Estamos aqui em mais uma edição da série Diálogos Internacionais do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Direito da Universidade Católica de Pernambuco e da Escola Judicial do Tribunal Regional do Trabalho da 6ª Região aqui em Pernambuco. Hoje vamos tratar do tema Impactos da Pandemia na Globalização. E a edição de hoje é muito especial. Mas antes de falar da edição, quero registrar novamente nosso agradecimento ao diretor da Escola Judicial, desembargador Ivon Valença, ao presidente do Tribunal Regional do Trabalho, desembargador Valdir Carvalho, e ao coordenador e à vice-coordenadora do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Direito da Universidade Católica de Pernambuco, professor Raimundo Juliano e professora Érica Babini, por todo o apoio na realização de mais um evento dessa série. Realmente, nós estamos na 5ª edição, e a edição de hoje é realmente internacional, né? Nós já fomos para os Estados Unidos em 2 edições, as últimas 2 edições nós fomos para a Itália, para Roma e para Pisa, e agora, então, nós vamos para Cazaquistão, com um professor universitário e um advogado, né, da Índia, que está fazendo estudos de pós-graduação nos Estados Unidos, e também, representando o Brasil, nós temos uma colega juíza do trabalho, a Fernanda Junqueira, que também está nos Estados Unidos, em Washington, fazendo estudos de pós-graduação, e como consequência, então, vai ser nosso elo aqui, também vai participar desse evento. Então, hoje, realmente, nós estamos num plano internacional mesmo. E vamos iniciar, então, com essa abordagem envolvendo impactos da pandemia da globalização, né, com o professor Iqbal Koroboyev, tentando pronunciar algumas vezes, treinando com ele, não é fácil, que é um amigo de alguns pernambucanos aqui, que fazem pesquisa em várias áreas do direito e fizeram esse link comigo. E então eu pude convidar o professor Koroboyev para participar desse evento. Eles, né, os palestrantes, vão falar, pelo menos o Koroboyev e o nosso convidado, Karen Paul, Singh, eles vão falar inglês. A Fernanda, em princípio, também vai falar inglês, porque ela vai interagir com eles. E eu, então, estarei fazendo novamente uma dupla função, um acúmulo de funções aqui, porque eu também vou fazer a tradução no meu Instagram. Assim que eu sair daqui, eu vou habilitar o meu Instagram para fazer a tradução das respectivas exposições. Já falei com nossos convidados para tentarem controlar a velocidade da respectiva exposição, porque sempre é mais complexo fazendo uma tradução simultânea dessa maneira, e eles vão, então, ser bastante compreensíveis e pacientes. Vamos dar início, então, começando com o professor Iqbal Koroboyev, que é, então, professor da Universidade de Kansu, e o que antes era chamado de Astana, e passou, então, a ser chamado hoje, né, de Nur Sultan, né, no Cazaquistão. Ele está no Cazaquistão lá, a diferença de fuso horário é de 9 horas, então já está, né, noite, né, no horário noturno para o professor Iqbal. É um grande prazer tê-lo aqui. Então, eu vou agora falar em inglês, e assim que eu encerrar essa minha exposição em inglês, rapidamente, essa fala, eu vou sair e o professor, então, Iqbal vai falar, ok? Ok, Professor Iqbal Koroboyev, Professor Karen Paul Singh, my dear Fernanda, I have just introduced us rapidly, and now I will go into translator mode. I will pass the microphone to Professor Koroboyev. I want to thank all of you. It's a great honor for having you here as our guest in this series, in this edition of our series of webinars at our judicial school in the labor court of the 6th region here in Pernambuco, and of our postgraduate program of law at the Catholic University of Pernambuco. We have united to do this series of webinar, and it is an incredible honor to have all of you with us today. We are going to talk today about the impacts of the pandemic on globalization, which really interests all of us. Our main public is made up of labor judges, clerks, and lawyers, and academics in law in general. and they are all very interested to hear and to listen to your insight on this subject. And so, Professor Koyabayev, I will now leave, and if you give me maybe 30 seconds, I will go into translator mode, okay? Thank you so very much. Let me mute myself here, okay?
Great. So let's just a little bit time for him to connect. Okay. So hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank our friend, Professor Sergio, and also our common friend with Sergio, Professor Marco Nobregas, for making me part of this very interesting and captivating discussion. In fact, this coronavirus, it's a big test, it's a big challenge for the world, but one of unexpected consequences of that is we have been more connected now to the world. Like now we are having kind of real global conversation, which we didn't have before the coronavirus, about the world, about the nations, and about the future. So first of all, let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Iqbaljon Karaboyev. I'm citizen of Uzbekistan, and I have been educated in international relations and in international law at universities in Uzbekistan and France. In France, I got my PhD in public international law, where I worked on regional organizations in post-Soviet space. Yeah. And I have been lucky also to have some experience working and researching in France, Turkey, and right now I'm based in Kazakhstan, which is a Central Asian country. So I work at the Kazgu University, which is a university for legal and economic education in Kazakhstan, in its capital, Nur-Sultan. So now let's switch to my presentation for today. As Professor Sergio said, coronavirus is now, it's a global pandemic. It's one of the biggest challenges that humankind has faced in recent decades. And as such, it is already creating a huge impact on global community and also on national societies. And so we have thinkers, scholars, researchers, practitioners, policymakers who are trying to comprehend, to grasp the nature of the COVID-19 and trying to stipulate, to elaborate on its impact for our future. Yeah. And so one of the most interesting and one of the most dynamic conversation around global pandemics is taking place among scholars of international relations, yeah, among IR scholars, which is a truly global community. And we now have platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and other platforms which enable us to lead a global conversation on these global pandemics. And so in my presentation, I want to bring some excerpts, some snapshots, yes, from this IR debate on global pandemics, on coronavirus situation. Yeah. So I would like also to share my screen. So I would just one moment. Yeah. So I'd like to use this some PowerPoint slides, which will help me to guide through this presentation. So first of all, yeah, we can just have a look on COVID-19 updates, and then I will continue to speak about how COVID-19 relates to major international relations theories. And then I will continue with discussions on COVID-19 and global issues. And I would like to conclude with some stipulations, some thoughts about post-COVID-19 world. So as we know today, there's a lot of information, being distributed, being spread out about coronavirus. And the quality of information, quality of sources vary as well. And one of also kind of challenges is to rely on credible sources and to filter out non-credible fake sources. And so today we have a lot of sources. What I'm using for following the situation about coronavirus is this Our World in Data website. So here you can see the URL address, ourworldindata.org/coronavirus, which is really kind of up-to-date website, which is being maintained by a global community of scholars who are trying to give us the most up-to-date and most credible and most comprehensive sources on different aspects of the coronavirus. So, for example, let's just check the latest updates. So as you see, it was kind of updated very recently today. And from here, we can see the dynamics of coronavirus. Here, as you see, kind of we have many different charts. For example, this is about daily new confirmed COVID-19 deaths. Where we see that especially, for example, Brazil's situation is kind of very concerning in our days. While in European countries, kind of the trend is now going down. Or about, so you can also check according to the confirmed cases. Here you see that here again, kind of you have Brazil, United States who are leading the unfortunately, these statistics in terms of number of COVID-19 cases. And another useful website is you can also see the followfinancialtimes.com website, which is also bringing, and it's free of charge. This all coronavirus related sources are now made available free of charge about different aspects of coronavirus impact on society and also on economy. So if we just check here, we have kind of so death toll, and unfortunately, here again we see Latin America, which is now kind of offsetting decline in other regions of the world. And also we see how this coronavirus, it has become really global pandemic, and also it has become really hurtful for humankind. Why? Because when you compare in early period, March 15, 21, the total average daily deaths was around 400. In the late days of May and early days of June, average daily deaths, it's more than 4,000. So this is really shows the evolution, the dynamics of the pandemics. And another one is this one. So this is the last, the infographics I want to share with you. And here it shows about the coronavirus economic tracker latest global fallout. So you can visit this address, and you see the kind of the impact on economy from different aspects. According to countries, according to the sectors, etc., etc. Now, so why because I have been sharing these sources, because today it's very important to have credible sources and to rely on credible and high quality sources. Now, what is a coronavirus? Of course, kind of it's a global pandemic, and There are many different aspects to that. But if we would like to think abstractly, what does it represent for us? What does it represent for humankind? First of all, it's one of the biggest tests, world countries have faced in recent decades. But especially in the first phases, when we see the evolution of global discourse during February, March, April, it has become a screen. Why? Because in short-term COVID-19, it has put a veil on most pressing global issues. Because if you remember, like December, January, the world was talking about Xinjiang minorities repression issue in China. The world was talking about the constitutional changes being enacted in Russia. The world was talking about Brexit, etc. But when the COVID-19 burst out, it has put a veil on most of these pressing global issues, and so they have went to backwards. They have been delegated into the backstage, and everybody has been only talking about the coronavirus global pandemics. It's also an opportunism. Why? Because today most of political forces they are trying to again to use these global pandemics for their own short-term and long-term agendas. So we see that how President Trump is trying, or has been trying until the latest episode, the unfortunate episode around George Floyd's unfortunate death. But until very recently, Trump has been kind of trying to use this his government's response to coronavirus to increase its chances in November 20 elections. Or we saw how in France, Emmanuel Macron and his ultra-liberal agenda has been once again on the rise. Or in Europe, we have seen how presidents like Viktor Orban from Hungary was able to promote and advance his authoritarian agenda. Or we also have seen that kind of governments now has stepped up and now with the acquiescences of societies in their mass surveillance technologies and mass surveillance plans. And coronavirus, it has also become a mirror or so-called trust mirror. Why? Because it's showing us the real differences between the countries. It's also showing the levels of inequality in the world between the countries. Why? Because until kind of coronavirus, we have seen this globalization discourse, which is saying that globalization was a value, globalization was a beneficial thing for all nations in the world. But coronavirus have shown us that, in fact, globalization has benefited nations in a very different ways, which means not everyone is benefiting from globalization equally. So we have seen the differences between rich versus poor, where you saw United States pouring trillions of US dollars to support its economies, to support its populations, to support its different industries, while other nations what they could offer to their populations was only some public health measures. No real kind of financial support measures. We have also seen how democratic or authoritarian nations are responding differently to coronavirus situation. And we also saw the differences in technological capacity, in rule of law capacity, or in state capacity. And of course, coronavirus, so this last point is one of the things most discussed among scholars. Coronavirus, of course, it brought some new challenges, but what it did is it is just playing the role of accelerating existing tensions or existing cleavages. So we saw how US-China tensions, which have been brewing for some moment, they have been accelerated because of coronavirus. Or this debate between globalists versus patriots. Now again, it has used this coronavirus situation to to rise in dynamics. Or racial cleavages, or our public fears. Like everything now has been accelerated by coronavirus. Now let me share we have a lot of different theories in international relations, but I would like to point to major 3 international relations theories, and how they are all useful, in fact, to read this coronavirus situation, to analyze, and also to to think about coronavirus. So one of the most powerful theories in international relations is realism, which says that what matters most in the world for the states is their individual egoistic national interests. Yes, so international solidarity, global community, all this is just a talk. What states care most is national interest, and they can only protect their interest only by using power and by behaving, egoistically. So we have seen a lot of examples when states were responding to coronavirus situation, where we have seen this, the naked instincts, where they have a little bit forgotten about this solidarity discourse, and they were just blatantly, openly acting for the sake of their own interests. This is very anecdotal example, but it's very revealing. It's about in the beginning about this mask diplomacy, and this when everybody in the world, every country in the world was looking for obtaining face masks. And in China we had supply of masks, but they were not enough for all buying countries. And so we have seen a French company who was buying masks for French government in China. And so they have already agreed with a Chinese supplier. And so the face mask stock was being brought to airport. And then at the last moment, American companies, American representatives, they came and they lured this Chinese supplier. They paid to Chinese suppliers triple of the amount offered by French. And they have just, confiscated this face mask. And so everybody was appalled by this egoistical behavior of American representatives. Or then the second one is this liberal approach, which says that, in fact, states, even if they are after their own national interest, they can still enable themselves, ameliorate, improve their situation by cooperating. And this cooperation usually takes place through institutions like World Health Organization, United Nations, and it also requires some kind of solidarity from the states. And so during this coronavirus situation, of course, the humanity has become aware that we need more cooperation. And so here I cite Antonio Guterres, who is the Secretary General of the United Nations, who says that this COVID-19 is menacing the whole of humanity. And so the whole of humanity must fight back together. Why? Because individual counter responses are not going to be enough. And then the third theory, it's constructivism, which says that ideas and perceptions matter in world politics. So that's why, for example, during this coronavirus, especially in the beginning, different countries were responding to coronavirus differently. But we are also aware that, for example, within the domestic societies, different individuals, different citizens respond to coronavirus differently. For example, we have all now we are living in quarantine societies, and so we are all obliged to carry face masks. But individuals, some of them, they follow these rules, others they don't follow. So how can we explain this difference? So one of the things is our perceptions about coronavirus. So here, this is from an Ipsos international polling organization, where they have, this is an example from Spain, where so this is very the impact of perceptions. Yes, we can see that. So it's here, let me read this quote. Yes, globally, coronavirus is seen as a threat to the world and a threat to certain countries more than a personal threat. Yes, which means we can see coronavirus as a threat to the world. So it's more abstract. So which means we don't take immediate measures in our own lives. Why? Because yes, coronavirus is a threat, but to the world. But we can also see coronavirus as a threat to certain countries. Yeah, not our country. But sometimes we can also see coronavirus as a personal threat. Yeah. So here their findings from Spain, where 84% of Spanish, they see COVID-19 as a threat to the world, while 82% consider it as a threat to the country. However, as the number of cases continue to rise, the sense of personal threat is also going up. Yeah. So as you see here, different kind of paradigms, different kind of theoretical frameworks, they usually help us to make sense of complex situations, to understand better this kind of complicated cases like coronavirus. Yeah. And here, this one is very interesting thing. Yeah. And this slide, this tweet attract a lot of interest on Twitter. This coronavirus is also changing our perceptions about security. Yeah. Usually in international relations scholarship, security was mostly indexed on state security. And as such, state security and national interest was about protecting state from external threats, and usually this external threat took the form of a military threat. Yeah, and so when you think about security in this way, so you think more about leader, you think more about army, soldiers, arms, etc. Yeah, but coronavirus, it transformed our understanding of security from state indexed security to human indexed security. Why? Because coronavirus, it touched societies. Yeah, and so here military force is not so useful. Yeah, to protect yourself against coronavirus situation. Yeah, and so here you see this one this is the original photo, where these are soldiers who are protecting the essence of the nation. Yeah, but here during the coronavirus, we have seen that now these are scientists, doctors, nurses, first responders who are trying to protect the nation, yes, from this global threat. Yeah, so as you see here, how coronavirus is it's a global pandemic. Yeah, but it is making impacts on every level, yes, of human consciousness, of civil society, of public awareness, and it's also changing roles. Yeah, of between governmental branches. Yeah, or it is also changing our perceptions. Okay. Now, let me just, as I said, there are a lot of matters to discuss about coronavirus. Let me just focus on this last point, yeah, about coronavirus as accelerator. Yes, coronavirus, it has been accelerating existing tensions, and one of the biggest tensions in global politics was US-China tension. Yeah, and this US-China tension, which started already during the early rule of Trump in terms of trade wars, now it has been accelerated, and we have new episodes, new chapters added to this US-China tension, and especially around the COVID-19 narrative. Yeah. So now we have a big debate and also a struggle, a battle between United States and China. And this is taking place on many different levels, on the level of public discourse, on the level of social media, but also on the level of international organizations, where you have two visions clashing. Yes, American vision and Chinese vision. Yeah, and so, for example, there's a big clash about the origins of coronavirus. Yeah, and so there's a blame game. Yeah, between United States and China, and so U.S. kind of has started to blame China of so the least kind of the most innocent version of U.S. blame it. Chinese scientists they may have accidentally released coronavirus into the nature. Yes, so there is a big attention about this Xi Zhengli, who is she is a doctor and she's a coronavirus researcher who has been working at Wuhan Laboratory of Virology. So now Xi Zhengli is one of the personalities who is at the center of attention and debates. Yeah, and then there's also a battle over narrative of COVID-19. Yes, about who caused COVID-19. Yes, US blaming China and then China blaming United States. And also there's a narrative of who won the fight against COVID-19. Especially in the beginning, China was kind of benefiting a lot from this narrative. Why? Because everybody was saying that, look, China, it originated in China, coronavirus, but China was very quick, to take measures against coronavirus. So they were one of the first countries to stabilize the situation with coronavirus. And so they were very effective, very efficient, and they won the fight. Yeah. But now this narrative is being challenged not only by the United States, but increasingly by Western countries like European countries or Australia, etc., etc. Yeah. And there's also this, as I said, Twitter wars. Yes. For example, we have this Di Jinzhao, who is a spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China, who openly blamed American side in creating coronavirus. Yeah, and also COVID-19, it's an opportunity to settle old accounts between China and USA. And so now we have this big story, about decoupling, which means it is separating American dependence on China in terms of manufacturing, in terms of trade, in terms of investments. Yeah, and so this is not only United States, but also other major investor countries, industrial powers like Japan, who are now trying to withdraw their investments, their kind of manufacturing chains. They want to relocate their manufacturing sites from China to outside China. Yes, so this is, I think, in the years to come, this story of decoupling, the great decoupling between United States and China, will be a defining story of global political economy. Yeah. So here, I think I thank you for your attention. As I said, it's very kind of dynamic, very interesting conversation. We can spend hours, but we have to stop somewhere. So thank you for your attention, and I will stop here and looking forward to your presentations.
Thank you, Professor Koibayev. Excellent. And you weren't tough to translate. I was worried before, but you spoke very softly, very slowly. It was really, really interesting. At least I understood. I hope I was able to translate. Estou agradecendo a ele por ter falado devagar e ter permitido, então, essa tradução. Very, very good. Thank you so very much. I hope you stay with us for a while. Since we've already past 35 minutes, we will go straight on right now to Professor Karan Paul Singh, who is a lawyer from India and doing postgraduate studies in, I think, the American University, right, in Washington. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so very much. It is a privilege to have you with us, Dr. Karan Paul. You can have the floor.
Thank you, Sergio. I would like to correct first that I am not a doctor, neither a professor. I'm just a lawyer. Yeah, I think the audio went. I'm not quite sure whether the audio is. I cannot hear you. Okay, you're mute, right? Anyway, so
Just explaining, Sir Karen Paul,
okay.
that here in Brazil, that usually lawyers are treated as doctors. We just mean
Yes,
not like an academic doctor
right.
or a medical doctor, but they're usually treated. That's why I use it. Okay.
Right. Thank you so
But
much.
I'm hearing fine. I'm hearing fine. It's great. It's great.
Good morning, respected fellow panelists, and thank you for all the viewers for joining us. I would like to start by thanking Sergio and Fernanda for giving me this opportunity to speak on the impacts of COVID-19 or globalization, and also thank you for a warm introduction. So as a little brief introduction of mine, I am a lawyer who have been working in legal service industry and management field in India. I have been now currently pursuing a Master of Law at the American University, Washington College of Law, specializing in international trade and business law. Since I'm not going to make a contrast on international relations like Professor Iqbal did, I will be hitting target on the impacts of COVID on globalization. What globalization has been a term for last 25 years as a very hot spot. It means that the process by which businesses or other organizations develop international influence or start operating on an international scale. And this is the question of the crisis right now, that how it will affect globalization economically throughout the world. Indeed, COVID-19 is currently changing our understanding of the world around us. It has challenged many of our ideologies, from capitalism to non-liberalism, from the oversignificance of work to realizing work-life balance, and from globalization to nationalization. And COVID-19 pandemic had seriously threatened the world's globalization at the moment. The pandemic had disrupted the international legal order, legally, socially, politically, and economically as well. Nonetheless, we contend that the pandemic's adverse effects on globalization is temporary, and I hope they are temporary, and that it would not provoke more international cooperation among nations on the long run. In order to demonstrate our argument, we will lay down the social, political, legal, and economic effects of the pandemic on globalization. While there is no way to tell exactly what the economic damage from the global COVID-19 pandemic will be there is a widespread agreement among economists that it will severe impact on the global economy. Most major economies will lose at least 2.4% of the value of their gross domestic product over 2020, leading economists to already reduce their 2020 forecast of global economic growth down from around 3% to 2.4%. This number is in itself very perspective. Global GDP was estimated at around 88.6 trillion US dollars in 2019, meaning that it is already a percentage drop in the economic growth, around to 3.5 million US trillion dollars in the loss of economic output. However, these predictions were made prior to COVID-19 becoming a global pandemic and before the implementations of widespread restrictions on social contact to stop the spread of the virus. Since then, global stock market have suffered dramatic falls due to the outbreak. The economic damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic is largely driven by a fall in demand, meaning that there are not consumers to purchase the goods and services available in the global economy. The dynamic can be clear, and it can be seen in heavily affected industries such as travel and tourism. To show the spread of the virus, countries placed restrictions on travel, meaning that many people purchase flights for holidays or business trips. This reduction in consumer demand caused airlines to lose planned revenue, meaning they need to cut their expenses by reducing the number of flights they operate. Without government assistance, eventually airlines will also reduce to lay off the further cut cost. The same dynamic applies to other industries as well. For example, with demanding of oil, which has fallen now, and new cars as daily commutes, social events, and holidays are no longer possible as companies start cutting off their staff to make up lost revenue, the worry is that we will create a downward economy spiral and it will affect goods and services and the purchase of the labor in the market. To use retail as an example, an increase in unemployment will compound the reduction in sales that occurred from the closure of shopfronts, cascading the crisis that the online retail segment are already suffering right now. It is this dynamic that has economists contemplating whether the COVID-19 pandemic would lead to a global recession on the scale of global or Great Depression again. We can see in every country, more people are seeking jobs. If we talk about United States, there are more than 3 million people who have lost their permanent jobs, and the number of unemployment is rising every day. This is not only about the United States, it's about every country around the world. It is a signal to an end of a decade of expansion for one of the world's largest economies for each country to lose half of its revenue. The oil prices have crashed. Demand for oil has all been dried up as lockdowns across the world have been kept inside. The crude oil price had already been affected by the row between the OPEC and other giants in Russia and China, but coronavirus has driven the price down further. Since we are talking about globalization, I don't feel to complete my argument without talking about human rights. Human rights, they do play an important role in globalization. Every country who has been able to achieve a global scale in the world, they have been powered by human rights. International human rights laws guarantees everyone the right to have the highest attainable standard of health and obligates government to take steps to prevent threats to public health and to provide medical care to those who need it. Human rights laws also recognize that in the context of serious public health threats and public emergencies, threatening the life of the nation, restriction on some rights can be justified when they have a legal basis and strictly necessary based on scientific evidence and neither arbitrary nor discriminatory in application of limited duration, respectful of human dignity, subject to review, and proportionate to achieve the objective. The scale of the severity of COVID-19 pandemic clearly rises the level of a public health threat that could justify restrictions on certain rights, such as that results on the imposition of quarantine or isolation limiting freedom of movement. At the same time, careful attention to human rights such as non-discrimination and human rights response need to be effective, and the turmoil and disruption should not be inevitably resulting in the time of crisis and limit the harms that can come from the imposition of overly broad measures that do not meet the above criteria. Activists sharing information about the coronavirus globally and also talking about China, that how they are imitated by harassing in the United States. The US judgment and the judicial department had quietly asked Congress for ability to ask chief judges to detain people indefinitely without trial during emergencies. This has been already been obligated by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. They have already warned that by doing so, by putting the human rights laws in risk for each country, it will also lead to a less economy. Taking advantage of the situation, these governments were attempting to silence the dissidents and to curb the political force, human rights defenders, and journalists. They all stated that the response of the crisis should be driven by science-based facts rather than the political or the economy. It goes same for the prisons, the violations in the prisons for the detainees in living in inhuman conditions. If a prisoner has a room which is being shared by 25 people, you can imagine how he is being isolated in those circumstances. It has been a ticking time bomb, especially during the coronavirus outbreak. Now, if I come back to the original topic, which is on the impact of the COVID on the globalization, I believe that there are some key drivers of globalization trajectory. We can start with global growth patterns, where the key lesson is that international flows tend to swing dramatically with macroeconomic cycles. In good times, they are usually faster than the GDP. And in bad times, they shrink faster too as people and firms hunker down behind borders. This means global business leaders can go beyond just watching disease trends and economic data. They can tilt the balance from negative to positive feedback and loop around by contributing to health, growth, and international cooperation. Companies across industries have already swung into action to manufacture urgently needed medical supplies. As Professor Iqbal talked about how China has been stable during the pandemic, I certainly don't believe so. China will be hit again. And since what all supplies they were giving to Germany and to Russia, to India, to the United States, they were all a lesson for the other countries in the world to not to buy Chinese products because of the quality and the quantity of the stuff they gave during the pandemic. Also leads a question on their integrity, whether they were being in a good faith. Large corporations can also soft the pandemic economic impact, for example, by following Unilever's leads in paying suppliers faster and extending support to employees, contractors, and customers. And they can support open markets. There are a few companies like 3M, Tesla, Mercedes, where they have raised a proposed block on the mass products from the US to India and Latin America. The other key aspect can be supply chain policies. They have come back to the top of the agenda, and shifting approaches have the potential to reshape trade and FDI flows. The key globalization related debate here is redundancy before reshoring. Will companies and countries see greater safety in international diversification, or will they try fostering domestic self sufficiency? Each country has a different economic pattern. Economic logic almost always favors the former approach, coupled with national stock supply for true essentials, but politics will sometimes force the latter. We can also talk about superpower frictions and fragility had already destabilized the international business environment before coronavirus, and the pandemic adds new layers of complexity. It has led to a vast expansion of state power, of of introducing pandemic control as yet another arena for ideological competition. In this environment where companies come from and how well they are from their home country governments get along will matter even more than before to decisions about how to raise capital, which markets do prioritize, and which supply base are cultivated. Many have predicted that COVID-19 will hasten a fracturing of the global economy along regional lines while complicating the blocks centered on China, the United States, and perhaps Europe. We might be talking about the world's largest economies where they share most of the GDP and contribute the most to the global economy. But the fact that the Europe, the world's most connected region, had struggled to mount an ununified response to the pandemic, just one more reason that a surgence of regions could not be a conclusion. We can also talk about most international flows already take place with regions, and short distance trade had not grown faster than long distance trade over the past few years. Be ready for the possibility of a more recognized world, but it won't be countable. Then we can also talk about technology. It has been an adoption of e-commerce, video conferencing, and robotic science have all supercharged by COVID-19. Before the pandemic, many focused on how new technologies could reduce global flows, manufacturing, substituting robots at home for lower labor cost. But many pandemic-induced shifts could also strengthen globalization if they are not curbed by protectionist policies. Cross-border e-mergers could be a more successful step nowadays, especially after when the world is trying to recover from the COVID. Business leaders can think productively about COVID-19, technology, and globalization by taking a structured approach to considering both internal and external implications. Internally, they know individual functions can harm less opportunities afforded by new technologies while managing organizational change with sensitivity to a stressed employee and teams are facing. We can talk about public opinions and about globalization may take another negative turn due to COVID-19, scaling back the surprising support for trade and immigration reported in recent polling in the United States. Customers and employees are increasing, and they are expecting corporate leaders to take a stand on social issues, making public opinion about globalization a potential management issue. The blending of anti-globalization and anti-capitalist movements further complicates the role of business in the public debate about generalization and globalization. And leaders to multinational corporations face the special challenge of public and government engage across nationwide. Focusing on such facts, becoming more sensitive to inequality, which Professor Iqbal was mentioning about, we can emphasize real economic contributions, which can help to support a healthier globalization debate. In my opinion, COVID-19 looks like a bend, but won't break crisis for globalization. International flows are plummeting, but globalization and opposition of globalization will continue to present business opportunities and challenges. Careful attention to the drivers of the globalization's future can help companies navigate through and even profit from globalization's turbulence after the pandemic. A volatile world of partially connected national economics expands possibilities for global strategy, even as if it complicates the management of multinational firms. If somebody will ask me to contribute, and I would just conclude to it that coronavirus won't kill globalization, but it will look different after the pandemic. Globalization is here to stay. The financial markets will become more important than the trade in goods and services. These trends cannot be reversed any more than the industrial revolution of the emergence of computers. Despite the clear danger that the global economy is in, there are also reasons to be hopeful that this worst-case scenario can be avoided. Governments have learned from previous crises that the effects of a demand-driven recession cannot be countered with government spending. I belong to a country which is called a third dimensional country by most of the international associations of the world. But I'm proud enough to say that India has been dealing with coronavirus very aptly to the situation, and it has been very effective. There are facts that the crisis may have a clear end date when all restrictions on movement can be lifted. Taken all together, this means that it is at least possible the global economy could experience a sharp around once the pandemic is over. There are still many variables that could affect, such as an economic recovery. For example, a reduced supply of goods and services to meet lower demand could create midterm shortages and price increase. But there are reasons on that too. It can be only concluded if there are a right mix of appropriate government response and luck. Some of the more predictions may not come to pass. And I would like to end my arguments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, no, my dear friend Karen Paul Singh. Thank you so very much for your great lecture. What we're going to do, we'll continue now. I think I'll pass the microphone to Fernanda. Fernanda, you going to speak in English or Portuguese? Did you decide?
Look, I'm going to start in Portuguese, I think, and then I'm going to just say a few words in English so I can just have a little bit more information from Kazakhstan from Professor Kuraboyev and a bit of a measure that was taking place in India. And I wanted to Karabo share with us. Is it possible?
Okay, yes, fine. A Fernanda disse que inicialmente ela vai falar em português e eventualmente ela vai falar algumas questões em inglês porque ela quer debater com os outros dois. Então eu vou ficar aqui de qualquer jeito, caso haja necessidade de uma tradução, mas a Fernanda, então, por enquanto vai falar português, vocês que estão vendo pelo Instagram. Ok, Fernanda? A palavra é sua.
Tá, vou pedir licença rapidinho, Sérgio. Quero agradecer o convite feito. Muito honrada de estar aqui hoje nesse evento global. E eu queria tirar só um pequeno momento, porque os recentes eventos nos chocaram bastante. Eu quero demonstrar a minha solidariedade à Black community em todo o mundo. Nós sabemos que a segregação é histórica, o racismo é histórico, ele é direto e indiretamente empregado em leis, em organizações, o Estado em si, e eu quero demonstrar minha solidariedade in the name of George Floyd. E a palavra de ordem que nós podemos, quando a gente verifica o que vem acontecendo pela pandemia causada pela disseminação rápida da Covid-19 e também pelo que vimos agora essa semana, a palavra de ordem eu acredito que seja solidariedade. E a solidariedade internacional como meio de combater os impactos nefastos da crise econômica, financeira e social instalada, porque algo que o vírus nos mostrou é que nós somos todos vulneráveis, independentemente de raça, cor, religião, credo, opção sexual. Ele mostrou nossa condição humana e quanto nossa condição humana é vulnerável. E para tentar, de alguma forma, minorar amainar o gap, né, entre as nações desenvolvidas e as em desenvolvimento, a solidariedade internacional é um marco, é a nova palavra de ordem, porque o mundo não será o mesmo, o nosso normal não será o normal. E, dito isso, tem uma frase da ONU, uma resolução adotada em 23 de 2012, que ela about human rights and solidarity, que eles conclamam, né, a international community to promote international solidarity and cooperation as an important tool to help to overcome the negative effects of the current economic, financial, and climate crisis, particularly in developing countries. So, the word of the new world order would be solidarity. And that's why I want to ask Professor Koraboyev if you may help me, because I know Kazakhstan is gradually easing the restrictions to combat the spread of COVID-19. I've heard that Lufthansa, the air company, is considering now a direct flight from Nur Sultan to Frankfurt about June, that my research and everything. So it's easing the restrictions, although the number has not diminished. I've checked that by May 29, 2020, it was about almost 10,000 cases around Kazakhstan. And I want to ask you, what about the economic impact of COVID-19 in your country, especially through women people? Can you talk about that just a little bit? Because we have come to the conclusion that the pandemic here in Brazil and other states as well, we have a very concern about the women population and the discrimination, and it has get enhanced through this pandemic. So could you tell us a little more about that?
Okay, Fernanda, thank you for asking. So let me speak about Kazakhstan. In fact, in Kazakhstan, the coronavirus response was one of the most comprehensive. What I mean by that is Kazakhstan, like other Central Asian countries, especially Uzbekistan, they have implemented strict confinement measures, starting from mid-March. like the first cases about coronavirus was reported in Kazakhstan on March 13th and in Uzbekistan on March 15th. Yeah. And then from 16th of March, Kazakhstani government, the President Tokayev, he has instituted like double measure, both a quarantine official confinement situation, but he also instituted an emergency situation. Yeah, so it was for enabling the government to take swift measures to fight coronavirus, but also to take swifter decisions in terms of financial allocation, etc., etc. And this emergency situation, official extraordinary situation, it lasted from March 16th to May 11th. Yeah, so now we are kind of finished with emergency situation, but confinement is still going on. Yeah, and as you said, confinement is being eased. Yeah, so there were several levels. So the timelines were 11th of May, end of emergency situation, and then like 25th of May for letting some workplaces to open up, and 30th of May, and kind of 1st of June, etc. And so right now we have kind of restaurants, barber shops, like cosmetics and shopping malls. They are all open now. Yeah, but still you have to wear mask. Face mask is obligatory. Yeah. So kind of most of the kind of working places, and also, as I said, shopping places and leisure places, they are open. Only cinemas, they are still closed, and they are telling it about 15th of June, maybe, kind of opening of cinemas. Yeah. But then, of course, we also have different situations according to the cities. Yeah. So which means you may have different regimes depending which city you are talking about. Yeah. So two cities, which are Nur Sultan, the capital, and also Almaty, the biggest and the first capital of Kazakhstan, the biggest city, they are most touched by coronavirus, and they were the first cities to take these confinement measures. Because of that, they were also the first cities now to ease them. Yeah, but we have different regions where we have still kind of strict situation. Yeah, and Kazakhstani government was, I think, the only country in Central Asia to have a comprehensive approach to coronavirus, which means we have these public health measures, but then we also have these different fiscal measures and financial measures, yeah, allowing kind of tax exemptions and allowing kind of many different kind of easiness to companies, workplaces. But also Kazakhstan was, as far as I know, the only country which have followed, even kind of in a limited way, this helicopter money approach, which means they have distributed real money to the population. Yeah, not to everyone, but to those who were officially impacted by this coronavirus, which means you have lost your job, or your employer asked you to remain without, to take a leave without payment, etc., etc. Yeah, so they have given, so it's in tenge, 42,000 tenge per month, so which is roughly $100. Yeah,
wow.
And, yeah, $100, and it is. Yeah, it's not big, but still, you know, and about more than 3 million people, they have obtained. Yes, they have filed requests, and the money was sent to their bank accounts. And it was 2 times. Yeah, during 2 months. Yeah, and also to some families which were qualified, they also paid their electricity fees. Yeah. Kind of. So it was about $50, we can say, like 15,000 tenge, and which is roughly, because I pay my bill, so it is roughly kind of enough. Yeah, kind of, you pay 15,000 tenge for your electricity, television, water, etc., etc. Yeah. So, and then President Tokayev, in one of his speeches, said that Kazakhstan, they have spent about kind of more than 10 billion US dollars. Yeah. So they have either fully spent or they are being allocated to support industries. Yeah, because now there are companies also which are allowed to get some kind of not only tax allowances, but also they will receive money. Yeah, so it was more than 10 billion US dollars, which was mobilized for fighting coronavirus, and most of this money was indeed Kazakhstan own kind of national funds. Yeah, and as such, I think this is really kind of, it stands alone, both in Central Asia, but also, for example, if you take an example of Russia, they didn't use this approach. Yeah, or if you take an example of Uzbekistan, yeah, but not in a similar manner. For example, Uzbekistan is now contracting debts from IMF, from Asian Development Bank, from EBRD for relief efforts to fight coronavirus. But this is again kind of also efforts. But as I said, this single out of Kazakhstan. And your question about gender, I'm not a specialist and kind of, and I didn't see kind of much studies on that. But what I can say is that, of course, kind of in our countries, in our societies, yes, so we have this, of course, this gender matters. Unfortunately, kind of it matters in a different ways, and so you have kind of women, they are kind of in terms of discrimination, in terms of, for example, domestic violence, and this coronavirus, it really, unfortunately it gets up to a situation where you are in the same house, etc., etc. Yeah, but the government is trying to, as I said, this kind of both fiscal measures, financial measures, etc., etc. I think kind of this is kind of contributing to address this one, but unfortunately, I cannot give you really kind of meaningful answer to this part, the gender difference part. Yeah, but I can also share one link, and I will post it on the chat. We have Kazakhstani Council on Foreign Relations, which is a newly set up think tank, and in kind of end of May, they have released a report in English language about Kazakhstani response to coronavirus, where you have, it's about 60 pages document where you have both context about coronavirus, but also detailed information about Kazakhstani government's response. So I'm just sharing it here, and I hope it will be of use for you somehow. Okay, thank you for your question, and I hope
Professor.
Were useful for you.
It's so nice to hear what Kazakhstan has done, especially like $1,000 here in Brazil would be like 600 reais. That would be like $100 tops, and we had like more than 6 million people under requiring this amount of money. That it's not a lot. And it has shown how we do need to overcome the rate of inequality because it's too high, and we have a very different, and we have to have another approach with this matter because poverty, it has not been, unfortunately, eradicated around the world, especially now with coronavirus pandemics. It has now enhanced through these developing countries such as Brazil. And in United States as well, we can see how the economy there is running, and we can see how the difference among the poorest people, which includes immigrant population and also the Black community as well. And Karen Paul, I was making some research in India, and I saw that this lady, her name is she's the Minister of Health in Kerala. Is that right? Is that how we pronounce it?
Yes.
Her name is Shailaja. Is that correct?
Yes.
And she's well known because she's like her nickname is like the coronavirus killer.
Yes.
Because she was the first one to approach the matter of COVID-19 and had the restrictions around Kerala state, right?
Yes.
It was a very successful policy that she led. And she was an example of how we can stop the spreading of COVID-19. Even though Kerala didn't have, I think, one single case of COVID-19, right?
Well, no, they had a couple of cases, but the way they implemented their restrictions and the way they imposed the problem was very logical, and it helped to control the measure there. So right now, Kerala has no cases of coronavirus. Yes.
But it's different from Mumbai region, right?
Right. So it is very important to understand that India is 4 times more populous than the US. It has 1.3 billion population. We cannot, undermine the fact it is. So you can imagine how has a country whose per capita income is just 10th of the US avoided being flattened by the pandemic. In terms of approaching to the coronavirus, I believe India has taken logical steps all over. And if you talk about Kerala, well, India is a democratic country. It has 26 states right now, and every state has different governance by different parties. There are 4 possible explanations. The pandemic may have struck later than in other countries, since epidemics have experimental and exponential growth at the start. A small delay can have massive effects on the number of cases. Then India also implemented a 21-day lockdown, which was successfully suppressed by the pandemic. It was a brilliant way to show the world that India is capable of promoting health measures across the globe in such crisis, and it was complemented by all the world institutions. India has not been able to test enough to count all cases and deaths. Without sufficient testing, many deaths may not be labeled with COVID-19 for official statistics. But let's face it, that it is all over the world right now. There are improper testing. If you talk about New York has more cases than half of India has right now. And in terms of deaths, US and other countries surpass India's numbers. India have protective characteristics against COVID-19. Researchers have proposed that the low share of elderly in the population, the high temperatures and humidity in India, widespread BCG vaccination for tuberculosis or other vaccines have helped India to escape the crust of the pandemic.
And Karan, one question. And do they have established a minimum wage, I can say that, for people who've been laid off, or for people who doesn't have jobs, or for people who lives in informality? Do they have a minimum standard that they offered, like Kazakhstan did, like Brazil did, and like the US did, and we know about that?
Absolutely, yes. India is one of the leading countries in terms of economy. India has great relations, and India also gave some waiver. India has imposed 15 crore rupees, which means $266 billion to the Indian government, which means that somehow this fund will be given to the people who will be needing the most in a time of crisis.
Wow. Nice, Karan. Thank you very much for your speech, and thank you very much for telling us about your country. Thank you, Professor Karaboyev, for your help. Yeah, it's a pleasure knowing Kazakhstan. I was impressed about Kazakhstan because we know such a little things about India, and we know such little things about Kazakhstan. And what we do know, it may be distorted, it's like another view, but it's like a dark view that we don't know, and that's because what the mass media wants us to know. And if we don't do deepest research, we will be with that view, and it's a very nice thing. so you can share about what is happening around your countries and to see that you're implementing very nice measures in order to fight this pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank
Sergio,
you.
give you the word. Muito obrigada a todos pela audiência, pela paciência, por estarem aqui conosco. Obrigada, Sérgio, por essa oportunidade linda de conhecermos países aí tão desconhecidos, com tradições tão diferentes das nossas.
Não, pronto. Estão me ouvindo agora? Estão ouvindo? Estão ouvindo
Sim,
bem?
perfeitamente.
Não, foi realmente interessantíssimo, né, essa perspectiva de nós conseguimos ver, né, a realidade de países fora do eixo no qual nós estamos acostumados, né, na Europa, né, e os Estados Unidos. E foi muito interessante também a pesquisa que você fez, Fernanda, para poder trazer, então, para a superfície exatamente essa visão, como você mencionou. Às vezes a gente vê como se fosse por trás de uma cortina qual é a realidade em países como o Cazaquistão. A Índia, temos pouquíssima informação no nosso dia a dia, então foi realmente muito importante. O que eu quero destacar, eu vou falar só um pouquinho aqui, eu quero destacar na fala de cada um deles, foram duas coisas que destacaram. Veja que nós falamos sobre questões econômicas, sobre globalização, os impactos que a pandemia está tendo na globalização e vai ter no período de pós-pandemia. E o que eu ouvi nas excelentes exposições, tanto do Karen Paul como do professor Korobayev, foram duas questões de uma visão humanista. Isso foi que eu achei interessantíssimo. Né? O professor Korobayev, né, mencionou, então, a ideia de que a solidariedade é que tem que efetivamente ser a nova ordem mundial, a palavra da nova ordem mundial, de que esse é o caminho que nós temos que efetivamente seguir, né? E o Karen Paul, durante a sua exposição, ele mencionou que nós não podemos falar de globalização e de economia sem falar de direitos humanos, e da necessidade de respeitar e resguardar esses direitos humanos. Então, muito interessante, porque dois profissionais, um na área mesmo de relações internacionais, o outro um advogado que atua especificamente do lado industrial, advocacia empresarial, enfatizando esses elementos por meio de uma visão humanista. Nós temos que pensar, então, na solidariedade que nós temos que desenvolver e sempre com essa preocupação em respeitar os direitos humanos. Eu vou só fazer essa rápida tradução, porque nós temos algumas perguntas que eu vou transmitir para eles, para permitir que nós ainda temos algum tempinho restando. Karen Paul and Professor Korbayev, I just mentioned that we were very happy with both of your lectures. It's incredibly interesting because they're from countries which we don't really hear from frequently here in Brazil. Like India is something. I personally have Indian friends, so I have an idea, but it's not like a day-to-day subject here in Brazil. And Kazakhstan, if you ask a Brazilian, now the first thing they go, who plays on their national soccer team? Let me think. They're gonna think something like that. They're not even gonna find it on the map because it's not talked about here in our country, you know. And so for us to have this opportunity to have two great specialists, as both of you speak, that is really, really wonderful. It's an incredible opportunity that our judges and our lawyers and our clerks are having here today. But we have some questions. Okay, I am seeing some here that were put up, and I will pass it on. If you can answer, then I'll translate from here. I won't go back to Twitter. It'll be pretty much short answers. Okay, there's one question here I'm seeing. Is there any news if some other country is considering changing or the payment regime of its public servant as a measure to mitigate the economic effects of the pandemic? Let me contextualize this. Let me explain. Because it was discussed here in Brazil, the thought of reducing the salaries of public employees in order to contribute to the cause of fighting the pandemic. And there was a big near revolution in terms of the public employees. Have you heard of any of your countries has that thought came out, like any government said, okay, I'm going to cut the salaries of judges, of public lawyers, of university professors in 20% or 30% because we all have to pitch in and take our part in the sacrifice in order to save our society. Has there been any sort of talk in that sense, Karen Paul, in India?
Well, yes. I wouldn't say about the public sector. The government official employees are still on the good pay scale, but the private sector has taken a hit on the pay scale for the employees. The company I used to work for in India, they have already reduced 20% of an annual wage. And so the other companies also have done the same. It is to avoid the capital risk in the market at the moment. It is temporary, and I'm sure that in the next year, when we are recovering, the pay scale will be higher than they were achieving before the pandemic.
But was there actually reduction?
Yes, it has dropped 20% at the moment for the private companies. Yes.
Private companies, okay.
Private sector.
Eu fiz uma. I'll get to you, Professor, one second. Let me just translate. Eu fiz a pergunta, na realidade foi uma pergunta feita por um dos nossos telespectadores, se em qualquer um dos dois países, no Cazaquistão ou na Índia, tinha sido tratado a hipótese de redução salarial de servidores públicos como uma forma de mitigar os efeitos econômicos da pandemia. Eu fiz essa pergunta a ambos. O Karen Paul respondeu, ele disse não, em relação a servidores públicos, eles estão mantendo o mesmo salário, não houve qualquer tipo de corte nesse sentido. Mas em relação à iniciativa privada, ele falou que tem ocorrido, was this 20% cut general for all private employees?
Not really. Some of the employees of some of the companies, yes.
Ok. Ele disse que no setor privado, algumas empresas chegaram a reduzir realmente o salário pago durante esse período de pandemia, do distanciamento, em até 20%. Eu perguntei se foram todos, se isso foi uma medida geral para a redução de todos os salários da iniciativa privada. Ele disse, não foram todas, não, mas muitas empresas chegaram, então, para compensar, então, essa paralisação, promover uma redução de 20%. So, so there's no legal restriction in terms of it's perfectly legal. Karen Paul?
Well, in the time of crisis, I don't think anything is legal and illegal when it comes on paying salaries. It is completely on the fiscal policies that maximize social welfare and honoring debt carried by domestic as well as foreign investors in the company. Some of the international companies which are in India and headquartered in India, they don't have any kind of fall in their salaries. But some Indian salaries who have just started revenue in the last decade, they are facing some of the financial problems. So they have faced 20% of a pay scale down to the employees.
Okay, so there's like no law that prohibits this reduction, right?
No.
Ok. Ele perguntou a eles, tem alguma lei que proíbe redução salarial? Ele disse que não. Isso aí foi uma decisão de companhia para companhia, mas dentro de um quadro emergencial assim, algumas empresas chegaram a ter essa redução de 20%. Então, lá não tem essa vedação, a redução salarial que nós temos aqui no nosso país, de acordo com o artigo 7º, inciso 6º. Deixa eu fazer essa mesma pergunta a Korobayev. Professor,
okay.
Korobayev, was there anything in that sense? Was your salary at risk of reducing 20 or 25% or public employees in general?
Yeah, so far I didn't read like in the news, like the official websites, also from my colleagues or from our own work, this kind of general and systematic reduction of salaries. Yeah, but I have heard like some maybe public governmental agencies, but on individual basis, yeah, of reducing salaries of their kind of workers like by 20%, yeah, but on temporary basis, yes, so it's nothing systematic, yeah. And also what I mentioned during this Kazakhstan's response, the official introduction of emergency situation was in fact allowing, especially in private sector, allowing the sending companies sending their workers to leave without payment. Yeah, so this was in fact it was kind of it was legally a kind of enabling companies to do that. But as I said, then it was government who tried to step in and compensate, yes, for the loss, yeah. But otherwise, I didn't hear this kind of official things. But what I can say is, so if we understand this is about the government trying to lessen the burden, yeah, to lessen the financial burden.
Yes.
In our region, we have seen the governments to ask the private sector to share the burden, yeah. And so, for example, in Kazakhstan, and it was done with the initiative of the first president, Nursultan Nazarbayev. They have created a foundation which is called We Are Together, yeah. And then the foundation of the first president showed the kind of the example by sending some money to this foundation, and then all the major businessmen, and in Kazakhstan we have these billionaires, yes, or official billionaires, kind of major businessmen, who have donated to this foundation kind of $5 million, $1 million, like different kind of things. And what I heard, kind of one of the mentioned sum was about kind of 50 million around US dollars were donated to this foundation. And so here you see, and then this foundation was sending help to families in need, yes, buying equipment, buying face masks, distributing, giving food help, etc., etc. So here you see how government is asking, or encouraging the private sector to share the burden, yeah. And similar thing was done in Uzbekistan, and in Uzbekistan there was a kind of foundation. Also, it was created foundation which is called, I think, Compassion Foundation. Yes, where entrepreneurs, businessmen, so private sector was encouraged to contribute. Yeah, so this kind of was kind of official and some kind of institutional steps, whereas the government is trying, somehow encouraging, yes, obligatorily or semi-obligatorily, the private sector to share the burden.
Ok. Bom, interessante. Fiz a mesma pergunta, então, ao professor Korobayev, e ele informou o seguinte, ele disse, não houve nenhuma conversa ou debate sobre redução salarial, nem de servidores públicos, nem a iniciativa privada. Ocorreu o seguinte, né, como ele mencionou, o governo proporcionou ajudas individuais, dando dinheiro. Ele tinha mencionado na exposição dele que em 2 oportunidades deu equivalente a $100 para o cidadão que estivesse numa situação de necessidade em virtude da pandemia. E com relação às empresas, tanto isenção fiscal temporária quanto a tributação, como também aportes em dinheiro para que elas mantivessem-se ativas e também pagassem a folha salarial. Agora, o que ocorreu lá, que eu achei muito interessante, ele disse que o governo pediu a colaboração das empresas da iniciativa privada de maior porte, especialmente de maior porte, de maior saúde financeira, para que elas também participassem desse movimento, para que elas contribuíssem para aquele fundo que ele mencionou que existe no respectivo país para cuidar de questões emergenciais como essa pandemia. Então, foi interessante essa visão de que o próprio governo tomou a iniciativa de pedir, né, que todos participassem desse movimento, que assumissem uma parte no respectivo sacrifício para manter o melhor tipo de tratamento possível, considerando, então, essas dificuldades da pandemia. Então, muito interessante essas perspectivas, essas formas diferentes de lidar com a respectiva situação. Eu vou mencionar agora para ambos aquele ponto que eu destaquei, especificamente em relação à visão humanista e solidariedade. Eu acho isso nós temos que visualizar e pensar muito dessa maneira. Vocês podem se acordar, na nossa 2ª edição desse webinar, nós tivemos aqui 2 professoras do Boston College, né, a Daniela Urosa e a Susan Simone Kang, e ambas destacaram isso, essa necessidade de nós sempre respeitarmos os direitos humanos e sempre partir de uma perspectiva, de seja qual for a medida que for adotada, nós temos que partir da perspectiva que essa medida está sendo feita para preservar, para resguardar os direitos humanos. Então, como as duas professoras mencionaram, você vê esse elo em comum que eu achei interessante. As duas lá fazendo seus trabalhos de pesquisa no Boston College, aqui professores e um advogado de áreas totalmente diferentes, mas enfatizando essa visão humanista. E muito importante também o ponto tocado pela Fernanda, envolvendo a nossa necessidade de ter empatia, de ver como o outro, especialmente diante dos recentes acontecimentos nos Estados Unidos, e foram desencadeados já ao longo de uma semana, mas com especial intensidade após a morte, se não me engano, é o George Floyd, o nome dele, né? George Floyd, lá nos Estados Unidos. Então, isso é muito importante.
Lembrando, né, que é uma história de sucessivos falecimentos em vista da intolerância racial, mas que o movimento, tal como agora, a envergadura que o movimento tomou é algo novo, porque foram vários estados agora, né, que tomaram a iniciativa de fazerem protestos ao longo dos Estados Unidos inteiro, coisa que não se pensava até então. E eu acho que isso é uma resposta à nossa vulnerabilidade mesmo, e o vírus nos mostrou, o vírus nos nivelou. Enquanto seres humanos somos altamente vulneráveis, independente de raça, credo, religião, origem, ele não tem barreiras.
Perfeito, extremamente democrático nesse sentido. Nós não podemos dizer, não, eles são diferentes de nós, porque nós todos estamos no mesmo barco. Se está fazendo água lá numa ponta, então vai nos afetar, independentemente de qual posição nós estamos nesse barco. Mas muito interessante essa ligação com essa visão humanista, eu o mais destaco desse encontro. Karen Paul and Professor Korbayev, I was enhancing here that we have had speakers before in other webinars, and it's very interesting the link we can make with a humanistic approach that both of you showed, like Karen Paul emphasizing our need to always think about human rights and concern ourselves with the protection of human rights, and Professor Korbayev mentioning the importance of solidarity. That'll be like the basis of our new post-pandemic era, which are very, very interesting. Like, we're talking economics, but our basis is very human. It's very humanistic. Our idea of solidarity, of cooperation, of protection of human rights. That's very, very interesting. And I will leave now 1 or 2 minutes if you want to just have a closing statement, because we're nearing our time towards the end of our presentation. So Karen Paul, my dear friend, would you like to give like a 1 or 2 minute closing to your speech? I'll translate afterwards.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I think there is a fact that the crisis may have a clear end date when all restrictions on movements can be lifted. And we need to be taken together, which means that it should have least possible the global economy could experience a sharp rebound once the pandemic is over. There are still variables that could affect such an economic recovery. For example, a reduced supply of goods, which I mentioned above. And there are predictions which are there to pass, but I'm pretty sure that the global economy will be hit back in a better way, in a more positive manner. And every country which has suffered a temporary loss in these times will be able to recover soon. And I would like to thank Sergio and Fernanda for moderating such a wonderful international webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen Paul. It was excellent. Really great participation. Very, very nice. Really, thank you very much. Eu falei agora sobre esse elo humanístico que todos eles apresentaram, e aí eu permiti que o Karen Paul falasse algumas palavras como forma de fechamento, palavras finais, e ele destacou dizendo que é óbvio que a globalização será impactada, está sendo e será impactada pela pandemia, mas ele destacou o seguinte: ele acredita que vai, então, haver um retorno. Ele falou, utilizou a expressão rebound, que é rebote. Vamos, então, retornar à tomada, mas agora sob uma nova ordem, sob uma nova visão, né? Então, concordando com aquela ideia de cooperação, de solidariedade que deve necessariamente existir. Muito bom, então agradecemos tremendamente ao Karen Paul pela sua participação hoje. E agora eu vou passar ao professor Korbayev. Professor, your closing statement, please.
Yeah. So First of all, thank you, Sergio, Fernanda, to all your team and your students, your colleagues, for organizing this conversation. And as I said, global pandemics, it's a big test, but it's also enabling new ways of, engagement, new ways of, connections. Yes. On globally, as you said, Brazil, Kazakhstan, we don't have really much societal and other connections, but now we can do it. Yeah. And I think this is when we say that, global pandemics will bring in a new normal, and then people are saying different things, that globalization will stop, everybody will close in, and it will be all nationalization, etc., isolation, etc., etc. But I think global pandemics is also showing that globalization, yes, it has mistakes, it has errors, we have to fix it, but in fact, globalization is possible by reinventing it, by adding new actors, by generating new conversation, and by pointing to other so far ignored aspects like solidarity, cross-fertilization, learning from each other, etc., etc. So this is one of the message that I am hopeful that this challenge will be an opportunity to fix the things that were going wrong, but to advance good things to the next level. And the second thing is that this with global pandemics, right now we are maybe approaching not the end, but at least stabilization of public health aspects. But of course, I think more difficult times may be coming. Why? Because starting autumn, we are going to see the real economic, societal, and political impact of coronavirus. And people say that the consequences of in terms of economy, society, and politics can be more severe than public health consequences of the global pandemics. So that's why we will need more of healthy thinking, more of rational approach, more of solidarity, and more of cooperation. And hopefully we as societies, as international community, as humankind, will be able to overcome this through solidarity, through dialogue, and through healthy thinking. This is my closing statement. Thank you all, and keep up your good work.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. I'm going to translate it real fast. Eu fiz a mesma pergunta, então, para o professor Kurbayov, e ele mencionou, então, essencialmente, ele falou em dois pontos, mas que convergem com a ideia que nós estamos diante de um grande teste, um grande desafio para toda a humanidade, a pandemia. E é uma oportunidade, então, de nós, ao enfrentarmos esse teste, sairmos dele, né, nós conseguimos, então, estabelecer uma nova ordem, com novos valores, enfatizando exatamente a ideia da solidariedade, do trabalho em conjunto, para entender que nós não somos isolados, nós somos indivíduos, mas não vivemos como indivíduos, nós vivemos, então, dentro de uma coletividade, seja no plano dentro de um país ou fora, e essa necessidade, então, de ter essa visão plural, essa visão cooperativa, essa visão de solidariedade. E agradecer também pela oportunidade. E agora, então, eu vou passar para a minha querida amiga Fernanda, para que ela, então, faça seu encerramento, suas palavras finais.
Agradeço a todos, Karen Paul, Professor Kurbayov, everybody who's watching us now. Pedro, for your help, thank you very much. And I'd like to finish with a quote, if I possibly may, about Rudy Mohad, about international solidarity. That's what I think it all comes down to it. Solidarity is the new word of the new world order, and is a precondition to human dignity, the basis of all human rights, and a human-centered approach to development. It has a bridge-building function across all divides and distinctions. It encompasses the values of social justice and equity, goodwill among peoples and nations, and integrity of the international community. That's what I really hope for. Thank you, Sergio.
Ótimo, ótimo. Então, a Fernanda, então, ela recitou, foi um poema, foi um texto, não foi? Envolvendo a solidariedade internacional, que é a base para a justiça social, que é a base no qual nós temos do qual nós temos que partir e construir. E eu acredito que exatamente foi o tom, o que, para mim, foi uma surpresa extremamente, né, agradável desse nosso encontro. Nós estamos tratando de um tema que envolve aspectos jurídicos e aspectos econômicos, mas nós podemos ver, né, nas palavras de todos os nossos 3 expositores hoje que a ideia de uma visão humanista, uma plataforma humanista da qual nós vamos construir é muito importante, especialmente a ideia de solidariedade entre nós, como nós estamos aqui, pessoas, então, de lugares tão diversos no nosso mundo, e da necessidade das próprias nações do mundo também visualizarem a globalização numa visão plural, numa visão inclusiva de cada um dos países, já que todos têm importância equivalente. Muito bem, doutores, nós, né, estamos, então, já no encerramento. Eu quero agradecer, em nome da Escola Judicial do Tribunal Regional do Trabalho da 6ª Região, do seu diretor, desembargador Ivan Valença, e do presidente do tribunal, desembargador Valdir Carvalho, também em nome do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Direito da Universidade Católica de Pernambuco, na pessoa do coordenador Raimundo Juliano e da vice-coordenadora Érica Barbini, agradecer a todos os participantes, ao meu amigo Karen Paul, né, ao meu amigo, né, professor Korbaev, né, a minha amiga Fernanda, obrigado, foi uma honra, um privilégio para nós ter a presença de todos aqui. It was a privilege to hear you speak, Karen Paul. You were excellent. It was really great. You too, Fernanda, really, really nice. It was a great opportunity for all of our judges and our clerks and our lawyers who are watching us right now. And I want to just thank all of you. Quero agradecer a todos, muito obrigado. E ao our public, a nossos telespectadores também, por assistirem mais este evento, mais esta edição dessa série de webinars. Nós vamos ter um outro mais adiante, umas 2 semanas mais ou menos, não é isso, Fernanda? Com mais 2 professores, né? Um juiz, inclusive, norte-americano, ainda está na fase final de preparação, mas já está assegurada, e aí nós vamos nos ver novamente. Com isso, então, encerro essa apresentação, sem esquecer de agradecer, como a Fernanda fez, ao Pedro, ao Cid e ao nosso Rodrigo Samir, que nos bastidores estão sempre dando esse apoio a esse evento. Então, continue nos seguindo, continue, então, assistindo às nossas edições dessa série de diálogos internacionais. O nosso objetivo é exatamente compartilhar a experiência de pessoas ao redor do mundo, como nós temos hoje, um representante da Índia, outro do Cazaquistão, e uma brasileira que está lá em Washington fazendo seus estudos. Agradecemos a todos e, com isso, encerramos. Até a próxima. Tchau, tchau.